I'm coming with you.
Did you bring your rollerblades?
I literally go nowhere without them.
So hello, and welcome to the Mix Presents Sound for Film Award Season 2023. I'm Jennifer Walden, here with the sound team on the huge summer hit Barbie. Joining me are four-time Oscar-nominated supervising sound editor and re-recording mixer Ai-Ling Lee, Oscar-winning re-recording mixer Kevin O'Connell, who, by the way, mixed both Barbie and Oppenheimer, so he was truly at the center of this summer's Barbenheimer phenomenon. We have Emmy-winning sound designer, supervising sound editor Dan Kenyon, and on the production side is sound mixer Nina Rice. So hey, thank you guys so much for joining me to talk about Barbie.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Exciting.
So let's start with the production side. Nina, what was your approach to capturing the performances in Barbie Land in particular? Because it's kind of like this isolated bubble, right? You're not supposed to have the sounds of the real world sort of infiltrating the sound of this place. So I'm sure that wasn't the case. You probably weren't shooting in a bubble. So how did you handle the production sound on this film?
It was an amazing process, a very collaborative one. We were shooting on a lot of different stages at Leavesden Studios where all the sets were built. And the minute you walk on, it's just incredible. You walk into Barbie World and capturing the sound was something like had to really think about, and like just capturing really cool dialogue, but also, you know, it's about the other elements and controlling them. Alongside, you know, the music, making that all work, setting vibes on set, making sure all the radio mics work, making sure boom ups capturing everything. So yeah, just it was a great experience all in all.
And so in terms of sound design, Ai-Ling and Dan, can you talk about the plastic fantastic world of Barbie Land? How did you make this world feel real yet toy-like?
No, one of the things that in the early conversations with Greta is that she wanted it to feel, Barbie Land to feel pleasant and inviting, but it was a little tricky because nothing is alive, and it's mostly an interior world. So that means like there's no wind, there's no water, even the trees doesn't have real leaves on them to make any rustling sounds. So we kind of like had to use a lot of like non-literal approaches to create the sounds for the Barbie Land world. So, since like nothing is alive and a lot of the birds that you hear in the film in Barbie Land, they are mostly not recordings of real birds. They are mimicked by us recording us blowing into this water-filled clay whistles that will emulate these bluebird calls from these classic Disney animation, like in Snow White, or we would kind of whistle and kind of edit and pitch them around. And also throughout Barbie Land, to help add a touch of playfulness, we add like vocal performed sounds and as much as we can. It's almost like imagining like a human would be playing with these toys, these dolls, and the sound that they may make. So, for example, when Alan was fighting the construction cans, their kicks and punches we kind of layered with like beatboxer vocals, and when like Gosling can ran towards the giant plastic wave in Malibu Beach at the earlier on in the film. He kind of flew up into the air. His flying movements, we kind of added like a vocal perform, like like vocal imitating swishing sounds. So there's a lot of things like that, and others that we kind of try to use anything that's like having fun, thinking out of the box, using sounds that's non-literal to still create this artificial, realistic world. per se.
Yeah, and we snuck some plastic sounds in here and there when we could with like the saloon doors. I guess that's later on when the Ken Mojo Dojo Casa House. But we also, there's a few moments when things are going wrong for Margot that we put a little plastic squeaks and things in there. She's perfect, but then when things start to go a little wrong, her feet go flat-footed, we use little elements like that. Um, and then Weird Barbie, we really got to use and play up the plasticky Foley because she's this overplayed with stretched, um, messed up Barbie. So we use the plastic tonalities when we could, but for the most part, we kind of kept it realistic, for lack of a better term.
And because this is, it's a toy world. I mean, you have things like cars, there's the Barbie jet, there's the ambulance. Obviously you can't have real sounds in there. So, how did you work that out with the director to kind of make the sounds of these real things still feel toy-like? What was your approach to that?
We were also given directives like, like if you see a jet, don't just use a real jet, and things need to sound light and pleasant. And so even like, say, if we see like a jet or a plane by, we cannot just use a plane sound. So we like layered with like, vocal performed, like imitating a plane by, and like layered with a little bit of a harmonica for the tonal part of it, and wind whoosh, just help add the lightness and airiness to it. And a lot of the times, it's a lot of trial and error that we worked out. Like say the Corvette. It went through many different reiterations. It started off as like, we tried like some like cartoony, more bubbly kind of sounds for it, but it was too distracting, and we ended up like layering different like recording like a remote control toy car that we kind of pitched down, and that serves as a basis, and with like tires rolling on like on the road, like on the plastic road that that we got from Foley, things like that, or like the boat in the world travel montage. We decided not to use like a motor-ish sound, but instead like a like a vocal performed, like a blowing through your lips, kind of like kind of lip flappy, bubbly kind of funness for that. But in the end, it was a lot of trial and error, and how it also set with the dialogue and the music.
And so, let's talk about the mix. How does the mix in Barbie Land compare to the real world? Is there anything that you did differently mix-wise to kind of really separate what it feels like in the real world from what it feels like in Barbie Land?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, we kind of like started it off with like, Barbie world being more of an interior world. So the sounds palette and sound choices that we use to create the world is more curated, is more selective, almost like a 50s Hollywood musical. So mix wise, I guess it's not as like it's not as much into the surrounds, but in the real world, because Greta wanted to contrast the real world to be like this like greedy, messy feeling, but it still needs to be good and beautiful. So we have more layers of sounds in the real world, in contrast to Barbie Land, where it's like perfect and pleasant all the time. So in the real world, we'll have layers of like happy sounds, sad sounds, dangerous sounds, but all in all, it needs to feel like a place that we want to be at too, because that is life. And so in the mix, we have more of these layers of sounds like envelop us, in contrast to Barbie Land.
And what about on the music side? I think there's a lot more like music. It's more like a musical in Barbie land. So, what was your, like, how did you handle all that?
Well, Barbie isn't a musical per se. It's a very musically driven film. And a lot of the lyrics in the film relate to what's going on the screen and help tell that story. So a lot of times we're going in and out of songs with lyrics and vocals from the actors, and making sure that that's as smooth and seamlessly as possible was one of our big challenges.
The film having like so many like original music that's so specifically written for each scene, and a lot of like clever, funny dialogue. But at one point during the mix, Greta mentioned like when we were mixing the Ken song during the Dream Ballet sequence, she's like, I wanted to feel like a rock concert, and so basically mix wise, between the dialogue and the music, especially on the music for this film. Kevin had like, created this dynamic overall for the film where, where the peak during the Ken song, it feels like a rock concert, but then, we have this like really quiet, intimate moment during America Ferrera's monologue. It kind of helps, this dynamic helps, bring the quiet to mean a lot more when we get to the Dream Ballet peak of the film moment, as Kevin like said it so well, there's a lot of interplay between the song vocals and the cleverly written dialogue. That are all, most of the times they are all major contributors as jokes to the scene. But yet, we want to make sure that the vocals and the dialogue, they don't fight with each other all the time, but still keeping the energy up. And I think like Kevin expertly like crafted and made room for the when we established the scene with the vocals, the song vocals, as part of the joke, he would craft room for the clever and funny dialogue when that comes in. And, so similar stuff, we have to do that with the effects and mix, so that we can allow the music and dialogue to play while still providing, embellishing and providing sonic characteristics just for each of the worlds. That is like Barbie Land, Camden, Mattel, and the real world.
So you had mentioned the monologue from Gloria, America Ferrera. This was such an amazing speech about how hard it is to be a woman. And actually, like in the theater, I'm like, yeah! And I was the only person doing that. And it was hugely embarrassing. But I loved this moment. Nina, you captured this speech so beautifully. All of the tonality and emotion in her delivery. I thought you just did an excellent job of capturing all of that.
Thank you so much. Well, I have to say hats off to my team as well. It's my boom up on the floor, amazing Steve Hancock and Laura Clough, and second boom up, Sarah Howe. And between all them, we worked really close as a team, and that scene is what you could hear a pin drop on the stage. Like, it was just incredible. And that's, I think, as well, being a woman, that's exactly what we want to say. And Greta has written it so perfectly. And I was just like, yes, I'm there to capture this. This is the best moment ever. It was absolutely amazing.
It was so fantastic.
Yeah. And also, Ai-Ling was referring to the big dance numbers when we have a lot of dialogue intertwined throughout of it, and it's also capturing those moments as clean as possible on set. So to do that, we have in-ear monitors given to the artists and to our dancers in the background as well. So when the radio mics into wigs, so when them into costumes, so things don't move, so we're able to capture the dialogue and then send it on to post to be like, we're the farmers of the
That scene, the Gloria monologue, I think everybody that I've talked to that's seen the movie, that's one of the first things that they mention. They're like, "Oh my God, that scene is like that's like one of the more memorable scenes." And you've got all these crazy scenes and story arc, but that's kind of the pinnacle of it. And so it's the big takeaway that a lot of people have. So Kevin and Nina, you guys did a great job at preserving that. And yeah, I think that was one of the better parts of the movie.
Yeah, and Brian Bowles, our dialogue ADR supervisor, also did a wonderful job, editing it all together, and then Kevin's mix in it too.
Yeah, and the camera stays on her like I think the whole time. I don't even think it cuts away from her, and it just plays out so beautifully. So if there was any dialogue editing, if you did splice and takes, it went by so fluidly. It felt just so natural and wonderful. So you guys did an amazing job all around on capturing that and editing and mixing it. Another one of my favorite scenes, of course, is the Ken's fight on the beach. So so much fun here. Ai-Ling and Dan, I guess let's start with you. What was your direction for creating the sound of the Ken's beach fight?
If I'm remembering correctly, in the script, I think Greta and Noah Baumbach kind of like described that scene as like Saving Private Ryan, but with toys. So they're using like frisbees, toy arrows, tennis rackets, inflatables, and such instead of real weapons. So for us, in terms of like sound design and like group voila kind of work wise, I guess for us, the objective that were given to us is like, say, if we were to play the track without music, it should kind of sound like that Saving Private Ryan's Omaha beach landing scene moment, but filled with silly sounds and like wimpy male white walla sounds, like high pitched screaming and whining instead of like macho battle calls. So anything that we could help add to amp up the humor and the ridiculousness of what we're seeing. But one of the fun moments that we had for us and our team is when like Ryan and Sumu, they do this imaginary superpower move. So we had a lot of fun, doing up this like using like synthy designy sounds because up to this point in Barbie Land, even though the sound palette are mostly like artificial per se, they are not like synthy designy big sounds. And so at this moment we just went all out and just like played with like more took a superhero like action kind of vibe to that moment, and so it's more exaggerated, bigger, more bombastic, and more low end, especially towards the end of that sequence when the sounds and the low end kind of like crescendos and build along with the music that takes us into the dream ballet sequence, which we kind of took the idea of also given like some input from Greta and Nick Huey, the picture editor. We kind of took the idea of this whole hearing imaginary play sounds. And when they're in the dream ballet sequence, when they are doing this like cat-like moves, we kind of added like these like stereotypical classic like puma cat call sounds. And like when they're pulling the toy arrows, we added sounds for those too. But we had to be careful enough that we don't use things that are too realistic, not too tactile, because it has to be very stylistic, so that the idea of this like imaginary fun, can be carried over. But then again, the main part of the scene is the music that's driving it.
And Nina, on the production side, did you have to mic up all of those Kens on the beach?
A lot of them, yeah. I remember using 18 channels one day, mixing diff. just like this, being like a DJ going. Phew, phew, phew. But yeah, it certainly kept me on my toes. But I loved capturing and those moments within that battle scene, especially Kingsley's big scream that he lets out, and Shooty's like, oh yeah, the big sighs and stuff like that. Just being there to capture those moments before we go into the big dance sequence. It was so much fun, and like thinking back to when we're recording it and listen those moments of like just the Ken's on the beach, like yeah, and all those sort of sounds that we captured on the day. Were a great guide to give, posted then for the work on to create the soundtrack. So much fun.
It was such a fun scene. So I have time for one more question. If you could let the Oscar voting audience know one thing about this film, why they should consider it for the Oscar award, what would that be?
With Barbie, we had to create different sounds for the different worlds, especially with Barbie Land. We had a lot of fun thinking out of the box to create sounds for it by using a lot of things that are not literal, but still keeping it artificially realistic per se, because at the same time we don't want to take the audience out of the film. There's a lot, even though some sounds may sound familiar, they are made with like vocal performed sounds or bird calls that are done with like water filled whistles, and there's a lot of like to me it's refreshing in a sense. We can use different genres to play around with, including like using some stereotypical campy sounds that we usually shy away from, that seems to work for this film due to the tone of it. And say like we even had a little of a homage to Monty Python, using like those coconut shells for like horse gallops when the group of Kens returned to Barbie Land after the beach battle. But all in all, we try to establish different worlds, including like in Barbie Land, it's mostly female and polite, and so Brian Bowles, our dialogue ADR supervisor, would have recorded like over 3 days of 40 actors, and each having unique casting so that we have unique sounds for each of the environments. What's Mattel, what's Camden, and what's Barbie Land and the real world. But a lot of it is the music and dialogue are so important to the film. It's so musically driven that and it's so clever in a sense that the sound helps, supports that.
There was a lot of elements to capture and control to make it work, but it was an incredible, journey. And like, I think everything just marries each other really, really well, sound wise. And yeah, it was an incredible job, and hats off to these guys. And I think we did, yeah. Thank you for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is a busy movie. It's every scene has a lot going on. Almost every scene's got a lot going on. On the sound effects side, we had to be, like Ai-Ling was saying, we had to be really creative and innovative on finding the right sounds that worked with the dialogue. There's a lot of dialogue that sounds that needed to work with the music, and they all really needed to work together. And there's a lot of different stylistic things going on throughout the movie. Across the board, I think everybody did just an incredible job and ultimately ended up in Kevin and Ai-Ling's hands to put it all together. And it was a really difficult movie. Maybe on the surface it doesn't seem that way, but there's kind of a lot going on. There was a lot for us to sort of figure out the best way to approach each scene, and it was a fine balance of all the elements of dialogue, music, and sound effects.
With Barbie, it all starts with the words. And, hats off to Greta and to Noah for creating such an original, terrific story to begin with that has a lot of words in it. And words were really important in this film, which, whenever you have a film that is the writer and the director are the same person, you always know that during that mix, you're going to be carefully looking after every syllable because writers typically want to understand every single word. So we're very careful not to have sound effects or music step on dialogue at any one time so that, you could understand everything. And then we were so lucky to have Mark Ronson and Andrew, the guys who did the score and putting these terrific songs together and and creating this entire world that never existed before, which was what was cool for me to work on something so interesting and original. And for us, this sound group, we got to work with this terrific director, Greta, who was just one of the best directors you could work with, and she enjoyed having our input and our collaboration. And at the end of the day, working with all of these people that we're talking to right here, it was just a terrific, wonderful experience and one that I won't forget anytime soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me to have a chat about Barbie, and best of luck this award season.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.